everybody, my name is Snitch. Welcome to another episode of CO Select. Today's match is a Tier 2, I believe, fog match on Redemption World. I actually had another replay for this map that I wanted to cover, but for some reason it totally broke. I think I have it downloaded, but I haven't tried to re-upload it yet since it timed out on the system. But for some reason, yeah, the replay totally broke. I have no idea what happened there. and nobody could really answer either. It's really weird. I guess there's some sort of hiccup with the website or the system or something. But yeah, it was really strange. So I'm covering this one instead, which is still a pretty good game. And I think it's an interesting game as well, mainly because of the COs in question, as I'm sure you've noticed. Today's opponent is Deathmoose, regular active on the Discord. They actually informed me they hadn't really played much Grit, but they're actually playing Grit this game. Grit is enabled in Tier 2 on this map. In Fog, in general, Grit is a lot more open, often. I'm sure, any of you Advanced Wars web players are very familiar with Grit notoriously being a centerpiece of Tier 0, but honestly, fundamentally, Grit is not necessarily broken on his own. It's more just the way he can break maps is the problem. Bigger indirects range can just lead to just insane choke point control, even in it kind of just ruins a lot of map design where you have to make bigger sacrifices in terms of terrain or design to kind of prevent Grit from being too strong. And especially in standard, it's the use of terrain and funneling different fronts is very good with regards to how a map plays out and creating a general interesting experience between two players. Having multiple fronts to fight on and dedicate resources to means that you have to commit in certain ways. And Grit normally kind of tears that apart by just being able to completely dominate multiple terrain designs with increased indirect range, and his death ball is basically being unstoppable. However, in Fog, maps are generally designed to be a lot more open because obviously the lack of intel means that you still have to dedicate to these, so-called fronts, but you don't know where your opponent is dedicating resources, and finding and gaining intelligence is quite a big part of that process, which generally leads to most fog maps being designed in a much more open way, especially WIGA or WIG maps. All the maps titled 1v1X, they're all kind of designed by the same player. A lot of these maps are incredibly, open and sparse, and they lack any sort of choke at all. And so while forests obviously exist, which could be useful for Grits and Directs, generally he's perceived to be a lot weaker in these kind of circumstances. So there are definitely maps that he is available, much like this one. And this is, like I said, this is even a Tier 2 game, so it's not even Tier 1. So yeah, my opponent Deathmoose is actually playing Grit today. Grit's day today is that he gets an additional +1 range and 20% firepower bonus on his indirects. However, he loses 20% firepower bonus on all of his direct units. His regular power increases the bonus to... I'm just going to open the chart. You guys didn't see it, but I'm going to look like I'm informed. Increases the firepower bonus to 40% and gives +1 range. And his super actually is also only a 40% increase. The same as his regular power, but it's +2 range. So you're effectively playing, the same bar twice or +1 range. So generally, I think Grit can just spam his CO power and be pretty fine. There are certain situations where saving for super snipe can be optimal, but... with regards to efficiency, slamming down your regular CO power isn't any weaker than your super if they're all within +1 range anyway. So yeah, just kind of depends in that regard. I'm playing Olaf today. My opponent's also playing Amber Blaze. I'm playing Cobalt Ice. Shockingly. I'm playing Olaf today to fit the theme. Olaf's day today is that he does not get affected by snow. His regular power makes it snow for 1 turn, which limits the movement of opponent's units, basically, and his superpower makes it snow for 1 turn and deals 2 mass damage. So Olaf, a pretty strong staple of Tier 2. Probably the most well-rounded CO here, I'd say, and probably the easiest to play as well, I guess. Debatably, I think he's the most straightforward. Not necessarily the easiest to play, but the easiest to understand and execute, probably. So yeah, this is Redemption World. A fairly interesting map. You have this 2v1 base format, which is pretty standard for AWBW map design. Contested properties are kind of just this range in the middle, but it's quite open, so it's very easy to kind of get to these side properties and be able to harass / capture them. Obviously the maps, it's angled in each player because of the 2 base. You have more infantry coming out this side, my opponent will have more infantry coming out this side, which will generally lead to some of these properties being a bit more contestable. But I guess these 4 in the middle, quite key. These 4 on the other side, the mirrored ones. And these 2 central ones I think are also fairly contestable. But you'll definitely see in this game how Grit makes aggressive action, very constricting, and I honestly don't have much experience playing against Grit myself. So for me, this was also a big learning experience, and yeah, I just thought I'd showcase kind of like the ideas I had and the things I tried to try to be able to get through this behemoth of a CEO. So let's just get straight into it, shall we? So, standard double infantry build. How am I doing today? Good, thank you for asking. Appreciate it. Both of us go for the neutral base. My opponent actually chooses not to start this chain and go for the airport. That's pretty interesting. I think going for this chain is much more efficient because obviously, you know, you're getting your infantry into a 2 capture chain straight away. But they choose to go for the airport instead, which is pretty interesting. Especially because Grit traditionally does not want to take advantage of any air units, considering they're all directs. It can't hurt. It doesn't hurt to build some copters, perhaps, you know, to kind of round out your army a bit. But generally, you want to stick to, you know, artillery and such. I actually go for an early recon on this map. Maybe not totally necessary, but Redemption World has kind of like a weird economy build, like kind of order, where next turn I would have. So you see, if I go through my funds here, I'll just show you guys what I'm talking about. Apologies to delay the replay. But yeah, before the recon buy, you see I have 6k. So if I build 3 infantry, I'll have 7k next turn. So I still wouldn't be able to afford a tank by like stalling out. It's just kind of the nature of the way the properties are. Everything's a bit far away. So you end up with like 4 turns of building infantry, which isn't bad. But already, like, I kind of don't need more infantry immediately. I have like everything on this side kind of covered. You know, this one's getting this guy will get this too. This one's getting started. So I like to go for early recon on this map just because it kind of fits the build path. My opponent also goes for early recon. A day behind mine, but, you know, roughly the same timing. So I actually choose to push up for these neutrals first, before going for my airport. Pushing the recon out onto the road, picking up more infantry. I suppose I am still kind of down a tank, so I guess, yeah, building this recon early does actually still kind of cost me a tank, but I find the early building so strange. I think you could definitely forego this recon, but then you end up getting, like, no vehicles out till, like, day 6, or day 5, day 6. Just seems really bizarre to me that the economy line for this map is really weird. But, I mean, yeah, I definitely don't think the recon is mandatory, but even when I watch high-level replays on this map, I very often see even really good players go for very early recons, which is very against the norm. Most players won't normally go for that in Fog because tanks normally just get the job done and they also beat recons, so as long as you're covering your infantry, you normally have no weaknesses. But yeah, I even have a double recon on this map just because the timing with regards to the funding you get is so awkward. But I suppose, yeah, you could just go infantry up until day 4, day 5, and you'll be able to get a tank out fine without too much hassle. And the map is quite big, so normally recons can't reach in time to harass infantry too much. My opponent's sitting the recon here, and they build their first artillery. The games begin. Our recons are barely missing each other here in the center. They actually go for a very defensive recon move, which I thought was quite interesting. Or I think is quite interesting. They choose not to push out too far. Like, this obviously wasn't the full move of this recon. So, you know, it could have gone on my recon, but actually, they perfectly miss each other, so... I swing onto the city, revealing the recon, just getting a view, seeing how much of the neutral properties my opponent has gone for so far. Pick up my first tank on the right side. So they just start capping. Artillery moves up to protect this infantry. Recon moves into the central forest. Obviously, I see it though, so I know where it is. They go for the calm. Pretty mirrored cap phase regardless. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily ahead, but I have more infantry kind of closer to the center, I guess. Overall, I guess I'm already on... Nah, I mean, I wouldn't really say I'm ahead or anything. Well, maybe a little bit. I mean, I guess my opponent's like 1 turn behind the side of these middles as well, though, so, you know, really. Overall, we're pretty much at the same pace. Even though they went for the airport early. Yeah, so double tank infantry. My opponent was the second artillery on the left side. So yeah, the big thing about Grit obviously is because his directs are so weak, you primarily build artillery instead of tanks, which makes us some really interesting builds. Like, a lot of the times when most COs wouldn't be able to afford something like 3 bases with 8k, Grit actually has a perfectly fine double infantry artillery build there. So it's actually kind of an interesting CO in that regards, where he really changes the way you want to purchase units and what you want to purchase. See, again, 13k for a regular CO is kind of awkward. Maybe not as much in Fog, because you can go tank, recon, infantry, but outside of Fog, it's a really awkward amount for 3 base. Because obviously you don't have enough to get like 2 tanks and infantry, or, you know, tank, artillery, infantry, so you have to go like, tank double infantry basically. It's just a very ugly number. Opponent goes for this interrupt on this central one. But yeah, it's not an issue that Grit faces. Pull my recon back, get a first strike from the forest, get a 9-5, just Grit things. I'm just pushing more infantry to the center. I've got tanks to cover now. Yeah, this tank couldn't quite reach, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, sadly I wasn't quite in range to cover my capturing infantry here, so maybe I pushed out a bit too far, but overall I get a good trade on the recon, and I'll still get the property next turn, probably. You know, even if the recon sacks for it, it's not really a huge deal. I will get it eventually. Built up my first battlecopter here. I had like the 14k. I could have gone for tank artillery infantry, but I chose to get out a battlecopter instead. Not sure if I like that in hindsight, but generally air is very good against Grit because it forces him to build anti-airs, and generally he doesn't really build enough frontline to cover anti-airs. So when he does trade anti-airs for copters, they almost certainly die because Grit primarily won't build tanks for reasons we covered, right? So a lot of the times, anti-airs will kind of like not be a big choice. Oh, sorry, anti-airs won't be able to be walled properly, I should say. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So it can be very easy to overwhelm Grit with air units. Obviously, you know, he could opt for missiles, but the unit itself is still very bad. It's not really like one range, just like a massive factor in that regard. So, you know, it can be very punishing to kind of overwhelm Grit with air. So yeah, I'm going to get the central property. This infantry moved in for a really aggressive attack as well as the recon, but I already have tanks in position to cover now, so I'm actually going to pick off this recon straight away. Starting these property captures on the side, finishing off this recon on the city. It's maybe a bit too forwards. I mean, I like I said, I'm not super familiar with playing with Grit. I didn't realize that really recognize that this would be a super hostile area, but yeah, these two artillery already are really aggressively covering, and obviously this is in range because it has 4 range instead of 3. But I'm going to start the property capture as well. I choose just to hit this infantry with the recon again, not really respecting the fact that he could already have indirects kind of in a really solid aggressive position. But I am going to pick off most of these early infantry. I think I could have gone for the cap instead of hitting that recon. It was pretty much useless at that point. Wasn't really going to get any more intel. I guess I could have drove into my airport, whatever, revealed I had a copter, but I think it was fine. I actually built an anti-air here. I don't think it's really necessary. It's Grit, but yeah, I probably should have been a tank. I was scared of the indirect bomber coming, you know? Happens. So yeah, I take a big loss here in the center, take so much indirect damage, take a bunch of damage on this recon as well. It's just really like, it's a fine line with Grit because obviously, due to the nature of his strengths as a CO, he doesn't get places very quickly because artillery moves slower. They kind of need walls to move forwards. It takes longer to get artillery in position in general. Wow. Oh yeah, I saw this. I remember this infantry took out my 2 HP recon on forest. What a roll. So you do want to be able to push in and aggressively hit him in the early game, especially when he goes for, you know, deep properties, to try and deny economy if you can. But at the same time, yeah, if you go too far and you end up in indirect fire, it's extremely painful. So I take a lot of losses here. One shot this recon on the road that interrupted my capture. Pull my other recon into the center. I pull this tank back, getting ready to heal it. No reason to sack it, really. For some reason, I move into the same forest that I just took indirect fire from. I think I felt like I could maybe clear the vision. Sometimes I go for greedy plays like this, where I try to clear out my opponent's units to give vision, and then maybe I can like not get counter hit by the indirects particularly effectively, but probably not gonna happen. It's also kind of trying to set up to capture this property. I don't know this infantry is here, so I think maybe I've taken out enough units to be able to sneak the capture. Put this 1 HP infantry into the woods to do a bit of scouting. Moving more infantry forwards. Build copter tank, double imp. It's the god build, we all know it. My opponents actually built their first rockets last turn. Rockets as well for Grit, very frustrating to deal with. I lose this infantry, I take a big hit from this artillery, and I get interrupted on the capture, so pretty unfortunate stuff. 6 artillery ready for my opponent. They revealed this one to me over the water. They also saw my copter now. So they are immediately going to build an anti-air on this left side. They've actually built their first copter on the right side. So genius anti-air purchase from me, predicting my opponent's copter coming out a turn later. I just knew. 5 head. So, just getting some trades in the middle. I generally know where the artillery here is, so I'm trying to play right out of their range. You see, I'm barely out, but they do. My opponent does have sniper attack, so they can definitely get some aggressive plays. I choose to just hit this artillery because I'm kind of taking a gamble that my opponent doesn't have anti-air, but I would be surprised if they'd already had one, I guess, before I even show a copter. It's not impossible, but it's a little unlikely, I suppose. So I'm thinking I can maybe just get at least a free hit off. And I mean, worst case, you know, we go through the same thing of like how easy it is to replace artillery. In this position, not too bad, I guess, but you know, killing off artillery does weaken the army a lot generally. Although I wouldn't say it's a particularly effective trade here. Get our double tank infantry. My opponent does get this aggressive left capture, so they're actually a little bit ahead of me in the economy now. I mean, are denying me this city, but I am going to get the exchanged one over here, so while they are a little bit ahead, they start trying to get this capture as well. Anti-air moves forward, rocket moves forwards. What's this rocket's range? Not quite the city, but it's pretty much everything else. Crazy, man. But I'm already starting to feel, they actually revealed their copter as well, which I thought was quite interesting. I'm already starting to feel very constricted. Like, I already feel like anytime I stand up aggressively in forests, I'm just getting pummeled with a bunch of indirect fire. And it's getting really annoying already. Is this in range? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not quite. Nailed it. So I interrupt this capture. I start capturing it again. I sack this tank to try and get this artillery too low to interrupt. I was pretty sure it was the only unit that was in range to actually interrupt this, so I figured if I got it low and I picked off these units, I may be able to deny the capture. Chipping on these left infantry with another battlecopter. And I start capturing this right city very aggressively. I've seen the copter here, but I know I have an anti-air that'll be able to get in range, so I feel like I should be able to kind of just wall up in this location, swing my anti-air over, and maybe even press for this aggressive capture. Because like I said, the thing about Grit, right, is he wants to death ball, but that means that his armies move quite slow. You want to try and, you know, puncture these side areas where my opponent isn't focusing, because I know all his units are, all of their units are constricted into the middle due to the nature of the CO and the units that he's building, right? Because they're all artillery, I can be pretty confident they're all hanging out around these cities and in these woods, and I've been taking the indirect fire, right? So I generally know where they are. So yeah, I really want to try and limit, or I really want to try and pressure the areas where the indirects are not, because it's hard for them to reinforce, essentially is what I'm saying. So I actually build an artillery here as well, and I swing the anti-air over like I was talking about. Not quite in range to start this cap yet, but you know, maybe a little bit too early with this attack. Yeah, I'm gonna pick up this infantry. This artillery moves forwards to reveal my infantry actually, which I thought was kind of funny. But looks like my opponent will not have a way to interrupt the cap without popping snipe attack. Oh, they pop snipe attack to one-shot my infantry with the rockets. Feels bad, man. So close, but it is pretty good power value for me. They essentially burned a power just to get like, you know, the 1 damage. I push up again, trying to get into this property, but I think it's just a real overcommit at this point. But I am kind of like pulling all the forces to the left as well, because obviously this is, you know, quote unquote, my opponent's property. So they're trying really hard to push for it and stop me from capturing it, because if I get this, then it's pretty effective for me. So I'm moving my units over, posturing to kind of pressure this right side, staying pretty well out of vision, I think. Not really giving my opponent any intel, my unit placement. They actually built a missiles this turn to counter all my copters coming out, which I thought was kind of funny. So they get an interrupt on this property and they move their indirects in. It's just going to be very inconceivable to take this at some point, because there's just too many indirects here at this kind of juncture. We'll see whether or not I adapt to that in time, but you see like the wall of indirects is lining up here for my opponent. Definitely pretty stressful stuff. I definitely, in this game, not yet I'd say, but at a certain point I started getting really, not like upset, but like just feeling like really choked out. I was like, I can't do anything. Anywhere I go, I'm just getting beat down by indirects. So the copter got revealed by recon, so I just choose to take the trade, because it also opens up. This is a bit inefficient. Probably should have hit with this infantry and then moved into cap again. That's a mistake, but I do try to capture this one instead. But I think this is way more inconceivable than this one, so I probably should have switched those around. Pull this tank onto the city. This was a 2 HP tank from earlier, so it's almost full HP again, so that's pretty nice. I finished off this 1 HP infantry. I'm still trying to push for this thing. I'm moving really aggressively with copters. This is definitely an overextend. But I'm really trying to just force this city to get a big income advantage. So when the stalling starts and Grits tries to build a mega army, at least I'm getting more money per turn, I suppose. But I think it's definitely been an overextension at this point. Swinging more units into the center. Tank, infantry, copter. In another matchup, I might try and get out more tanks, honestly, than I am. But against Grit, I really do think that the copters are kind of the way to go. So the missiles reveals itself here. I now know it's there. I checked replay and I was like, yep, that's the missiles. And I had a chuckle because I went, haha, they built missiles? Ha ha ha. So the helicopter reveals itself. I'm losing units to the indirects here. It's brutal. Should have played for this city. Definitely a mistake. But like I say, I'm not very familiar with Grit myself. This was kind of one of my first games against Grit. I did have another one recently, I think, that I actually won pretty handedly because I just managed to get a really good aggressive early game. As opposed to the late early game. But yeah, I managed to get a really aggressive early that kind of like put a stop to like the building and like their early economy, which really just put me really far ahead and they ended up resigning really early. But I really didn't have much experience against the CO. So I finally hit my super this turn. Obviously this is how I want to play this matchup. It's kind of like trying to be as even as I can and then hitting super, which is obviously just massive value. I can't see it in Fog, but you know, 20% of 130k is you know, 26k, so definitely pretty reasonable damage. So I used my copters to pick off this infantry and I start capturing this left one. I think it's at this point in the game I was like, all right, you need to stop going for like these, you need to stop going for these really aggressive properties and just trying to take the ones on the side and build just a couple thousand economy, you know. I end up hitting this, trading a tank for this anti-air, just so my copters could kind of continue to have free reign in the middle. And then obviously I recognize there's a missile here, so I think about pivoting my copters over to the right as well. Position my units here, so I finally go for this capture instead, which is obviously way more easy to get. And I'm actually moving my units forwards, but I think it's a little bit aggressive. I don't think I have to be doing this, but I'm just trying to secure this right side city steal, basically, because I'll be getting 2 cities next turn, which is obviously a 4k swing, so it's pretty substantial. I got another anti-air because I lost my original one. Let's see how my opponent responds. Pull this recon to the woods, which reveals my units. And the indirect fire comes out. They actually built a T-copter as well, which I thought was kind of interesting. They built this mech earlier that I didn't talk about, but the mech actually killed the pipe seam, I think. The pipe seam died this turn, so they had a mech like on this city, killing this pipe seam, which I thought was kind of interesting when I noticed it dropped. I mean, it's not working properly in the replay, but they actually built a T-copter to funnel the mech as well. I don't know if it's really worth it committing 3k to take out a pipe seam, but it's not the first time we've seen it. It's a little bit greedy, obviously, but if your opponent doesn't know it's happening, there's no necessarily massive downside. And then they build a battleship over here, so this is just going to completely break any push I can get on the left. Obviously, I don't know about it, and I probably never will know about it, but either way. They do manage to churn out a battleship. Coming on to my next turn, I get the double city trade. Snow plus mass damage. That's normally enough to stop any kind of counterattack. So yeah, I do manage to, like, especially because of, you know, it's against Grit, right? So all the units are kind of stuck in the center. I do manage to finally take an economic advantage. So using my weaker units to pick off some in the middle. I guess I didn't see this anti-air at the time, but now I know it's there. So I know I'm going to lose a copter. So I'm getting tanks in position to be able to counter hit the anti-air. I'm kind of overwhelming the anti-air anyway, so it's not really the end of the world if I lose one copter and then I trade it out, you know, so probably not gonna know what's happening. I think I did see it, but I tried to kill the recon, and again, in the hopes that my opponent had no units to give vision, but sadly, it was not meant to be. Super Snipe comes out. Let's address the damage. Recon flies in, gets a big hit on this infantry, revealing basically just more infantry, so kind of an unfortunate turn for my opponent. I did manage to back off this turn. Is that really the rocket range? Wow, the rocket takes out my tank on this plains. That's insane. I parked this recon aggressively just to get some scouting info, I think. It is going to drop. So they are getting some fair hits into the army. They got a tank. I'm going to lose another infantry here. I lost a copter to this anti-air, but that's not really the end of the world. Missiles moving forwards. Did the battleship actually hit something? I guess I hit the infantry, right? I would have no way to know it was a battleship there, so... Absolute mystery. Copter double recon infantry for my opponent. Coming into my next turn. Taking out some forward infantry. Mainly focusing on trying to take out infantry here. This is something you'll see good players do fairly often as well, is once you have an income advantage, the main thing to do is to deny your opponent from being able to, like, take it back, right? And how do they take it back? It's foot soldiers. So if I can cripple all my opponent's infantry, which I'm already kind of doing because I'm Olaf and I've already popped at least one Winter Fury in this game, if I'm able to cripple their infantry, it'd be harder for them to be able to actually capture back any of these cities or even contest any cities in general. So like obviously a vehicle death ball from Grit is very dangerous and they can get a lot of damage done. But with regards to actually like turning the game in my opponent's favor, I think it's actually quite limiting. if I could just keep control of the infantry. So I do lose another tank here on the left. They keep face checking these woods with the rocket in position. So I'm taking a lot of like return damage here, but I'm slowly building up bar for a second Winter Fury. So that's kind of what I'm relying on, is using my second Winter Fury to break open the game, kind of. Indirects establishing on the left here, but I've already got the city I wanted, and I'm denied this city. It's pretty key as well, I think. With regards to the contested properties, I basically have 7 to 2 right now. You know, we talked about these 10 in the center, like these 4, these 2, and these 4. Sorry, I have 6 to 3. So I have 6 to 3 right now with regards to contested properties, and obviously at this point in the game, this is why you see me pulling back here on the right as well, because I'm confident I have this economic advantage. If I could just slow the game down and just get a bunch of material building going, I should be able to eventually build enough of a lead, and then in combination with my super, be able to push through and crack the indirect, hopefully. That's kind of what I'm aiming for right now. Especially because my opponent is, you know, at this point they're trying to push forwards because they know they're on the back end. So they're trying to use like the small material advantage they currently have. I mean, it is quite substantial in unit value, but part of that is obviously the battleship. But they do have a material advantage because they've been, you know, I've been exchanging units and losing some of these fights. So they're trying to make advantage of that by kind of like deathballing their units forwards a bit and trying to push for some of these cities. But you see me holding a very defensive position here, just kind of slow the game down and be able to eke out an army lead. Same thing here, you know, a force building up on the left, getting ready to push forwards. They even pulled this aggressive T-copter in here. Forgot the mech it was meant to pick up. Feels bad, man. That mech was left behind. Going my next turn. Once again, you know, I hit infantry here. I revealed some artillery, and then I realized I could sit a tank in between the artillery, and I thought maybe I could like cheekily get some hits here, but I think it was definitely a bit forwards. And once again, I'm trying to use it to capture this property, but it's probably a bit unrealistic. So getting some counter hits here on the right. I try to move my infantry into the woods, maybe to threaten a sneaky HQ cap, but it doesn't work out. I pick off a copter with my anti-air. I just position the units forwards again. Take a hit on this T-copter. Recycling out tanks, you know, to cities, getting ready to pull them back in when I can. Once they've got a bit of a heal. And I'm going to start pulling copters from the left to the right. I think I should have done this a lot sooner as well. Well, maybe I am, but I think I should have been pulling more. I do have a copter over here, so I did do it already. I did talk about it earlier that I should have been pulling copters over, but I think, especially once I knew there was some missiles over here, getting any further is a bit unrealistic. So the battleship's actually perfectly covering this city for the rest of time. So that's pretty unfortunate, but my opponent also isn't getting it, so I don't feel too bad about it necessarily. So they're moving forwards with this left force. Definitely just throwing away and blundering a lot of units. Like I said, I'm just really unfamiliar with Grit. Like the punish range and the punish in general is really insane. Like it takes so much damage if you just go a little bit too far. Very awkward stuff. So once again, my opponent's ramming units into this forest, trying to get good trades with that rockets. I'm able to judge about the range of where the rockets are as a result. And I have actually built up enough charge for another Winter Fury, so you're probably going to see me dropping that one this turn. Hey, there it is. It's snowing. So this turn, you know, my artillery takes out the recon. At this point, I see it as an opportunity where I probably have to push forwards because I see some exposed. Once I get the recon forwards, I see exposed indirects, which makes me think my opponent's trying to push forwards and the indirects are a bit too far. So I use this opportunity to try and break through. I end up smashing 2 artillery, getting a huge hit on the rockets with the copter and get this other artillery very, very low. Once again, I'm just trading down on infantry. 2 HP anti-air. I'm going to heal it on this tile to kind of like cover this copter hits. And also the copter hits aren't even that effective. Like, I mean, if you, obviously it's Grit, but if I'm in my super, this AHP copter hits my copter, you can do this. It only puts me to 6 HP, and then I actually end up trading more damage back than I would take. So that's kind of like a testament to how ineffective Grit's copters can be. So I'm moving my infantry up now, feeling pretty confident after the Winter Fury, because obviously it's going to be another big economic, well, not even economic, but it will be an economic hit, but that's not what I meant. I meant value hit for my opponent. I'm going to get a lot of damage. So I captured this central property, because there's been a lot of indirects here on the left, so I'm actually thinking that maybe a lot of the army has moved over here now. So maybe I can actually start puncturing the center as well, and that's what I mean, you know? It takes a very long time for Grit to move his army. So being able to punish areas where you think he's abandoned is definitely the angle you want to take. I used 2 1 HP infantry to hit this T-copter. Sadly, it takes no damage. It was very tragic. And I go for the God build again. My opponent's next turn, and I actually just choose to resign here. I feel like it's a little bit of an early resign. I mean, looking at the unit count slash
army value, you can see we're fairly close, but I do have a big economic lead, and they did just kind of get collapsed on this left side. I think this is probably very hard to salvage at this point. I'm kind of streaming more tanks and copters, and I just don't think my opponent can get the directs over to contest this force. And also, this force on the left, while it is fairly substantial, obviously the battleship can't push forward at all. It's a battleship. And the rest of them, again, you know, it's kind of that idea of like the units to wall for these indirects kind of don't exist. So it's very hard for them to walk forwards, because not only are they very slow, but they also don't really have the units to wall for them present right now. Snow as well is going to make this next turn very awkward. Very hard for my opponent's units to move around the map and get anything done. But, you know, it's not like this rockets could just fly down here and hope that I don't have anything. You know, like, I am quite, you know, scarcely defended on this left side, but overall, my opponent doesn't have that information necessarily. And they're completely collapsing on their right side as well. I have a bunch of units here. I could probably push forwards, try to threaten an HQ capture. I think that's what I'll be doing in the next few days. And obviously, you know, these are all indirects, and it's slowing this turn. They're never going to get to this side of the map to help out. And there's just not enough deployment here to be able to hold this push, I think, at this point. Once this rocket has been effectively reduced to useless, being put at 4 HP. So yeah, pretty interesting game. Like I said, Deathmoose said that they weren't like a super great player. They haven't like got like 1,000 great games or anything. This is one of their first ones as well. So we were both kind of new to the whole concept, but I definitely, you know, it's a different experience, and you really have to think about different things. And I definitely made a lot of key mistakes here. I managed to push out a victory by applying some of the concepts I talk about, where, you know, you want to focus areas that Grit can't defend. You want to, you know, highlight the fact that his army moves very slowly, this kind of thing. But overall, I think I was quite fortunate with the way this game played out, and I definitely wouldn't say it was a comfortable win. But, you know, maybe it gave you guys an idea kind of into some of the ideas of Grit and how he plays, especially considering he's not a CEO that you'll normally see on the ladder, given the fact that he's normally banned. So yeah, definitely an interesting experience overall. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode of CEO Select. If you did, make sure to leave a like. It really helps out the channel. Comment down below with some analysis. Call me bad. Yell at me for taking those trades. What was I thinking doing that with a tank? You idiot. You pressed super there? Ah! Anyways, thank you guys very much for checking out. You can also subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And I'll see you guys again next time. Have a great day. Bye!